Mr. Controversy, Eminem.
Ladies and gentlemen, Eminem!
You know, sat at home this year for the Grammys and watched Jay and Kendrick not get it. And I felt like one of them should have got it. I felt like Joyner Lucas should have won a Grammy for I'm Not Racist.
Yeah.
Absolutely should have won a fucking Grammy. I watched 50, same shit. 50 did not win Best New Artist at the Grammys.
There was nothing bigger than 50.
Nothing bigger, and nobody since maybe like Snoop came out the gate like that. My first album didn't do it. I never saw someone's first album and the wave happen like he had. And then he doesn't get it.
The night was supposed to be a glitzy tribute to hip-hop, flashy performances, rehearsed speeches, and a few polished nods to legends. But the second Eminem and 50 Cent hit the stage, the whole vibe flipped. They weren't dressed to impress, and they weren't smiling for the cameras. They weren't here to entertain, they came to shake the room, and they weren't playing. Eminem walked straight up to the mic, clutching a sheet of paper like it was a weapon. His face, stone cold, no smile, no hype, just laser focus. You could tell from the way he stood, this wasn't about headlines or throwbacks. Nah, he came to drop a truth bomb right in the middle of a live broadcast. Millions were watching, and he knew exactly what he was about to do. Right beside him, 50 Cent stood with his arms folded, eyes locked on the crowd. He wasn't saying a word, but his face said everything. He was calm, but ready to let him blow the lid off the whole thing. And just like that, Eminem slapped the paper onto the mic stand, letting it dangle right there for every camera in the place to catch. No turning back now. Then he said it, voice sharp, slicing through the crowd noise like a knife. This was a list of every artist who should have won and every artist who actually did. 50 Cent let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. Man, this has been happening for years. That was it. The audience started shifting in their seats. Whispers turned into gasps. Some people had been waiting for this call out. Others, completely blindsided. The host off to the side looked like a deer in headlights. This was meant to be a feel-good moment for the industry. But this was a full-on reality check. Eminem held the list up high, eyes scanning the names. They want to talk about hip-hop's legacy? Cool. Then let's talk about how they've straight up ignored it for decades. Let's talk about the biggest names in the game getting skipped. On purpose, Eminem said, and boom, the whole place went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. That's when 50 Cent stepped up. His voice wasn't loud, but it hit hard. You ever notice how the same faces keep winning again and again while the real ones get ghosted? Some folks figured out how to play the game, and the rest of us, they act like we ain't even in the room. Backstage, chaos broke out. Producers were scrambling, whispering, freaking out. This definitely wasn't on the teleprompter, but it was too late. The curtain was already pulled back, and the raw truth was pouring out live on camera. The stage lights stayed bright, but the vibe in the room turned ice cold. No applause, no laughter, just this thick tension in the air, like the whole audience realized they were watching history. Unease, shock, maybe even fear, something real was happening. Eminem leaned the paper forward, making sure every camera got a full shot. He didn't have to say a word. The list did the talking. These were legends, rap giants, completely erased from the so-called official history of hip-hop awards, names that should have been carved in stone, but never even got a mention. Then he spoke again, calm, but with that kind of rage that's been boiling for years. They've been doing this for decades. They lied to us. They use us when it benefits them. They'll throw us on stage, have us sell out arenas, ride the wave when it's hot. But when it's time for real respect, when it's time for the awards that actually mean something, he glanced at 50, then stared straight into the crowd. They act like we don't exist. People were squirming. Some leaned forward, hanging on every word. Others exchanged looks like, did he really just say that? Everybody knew what he meant, but nobody had ever dared to put it out there so raw, so direct. Then Eminem took a deep breath and dropped the first bomb. DMX had the biggest rap albums of the year, twice. You know how many Grammys he got for that? Eminem asked, his voice steady. 0. 50 Cent let out a low laugh, shaking his head like he'd heard it 1,000 times before. Say that again, man, he said, smirking. 'Cause I don't think they heard you right. Eminem didn't even flinch. DMX dropped the biggest rap albums 2 years straight and got 0 Grammys, not even a nomination for Album of the Year. The audience was buzzing now. People whispering, looking around. Some folks already knew. Others were stunned. But nobody could pretend it didn't hit. Then M flipped the paper, revealing another name. Nas, one of the greatest lyricists this game has ever seen, didn't win a single Grammy for nearly 30 years. He paused again, his voice dropping lower. Snoop Dogg? 0. Tupac? 0. That last one hit hard. The whole crowd seemed to gasp at once. This wasn't just about awards anymore. It was about truth being dragged out into the light. So don't sit here and tell me this ain't rigged, M snapped. 50 Cent stepped forward, looking right at the crowd, eyes scanning every face. See, the problem is, they pretend like they respect us. They'll throw us on the flyer, let us close the show, act like we're the main event, but when it's time to hand out the real love, the real trophies, they give it to somebody else. Every single time, dot. Eminem nodded slowly, gripping the mic tighter. This ain't about me. It's never been. It's about everybody they did dirty before us, and the ones they're still doing it to now. The whole room went still. That kind of silence where you can feel the tension in the air. Then 50 stepped up again, adjusted the mic, and looked around. Some folks were shifting in their seats. Others, eyes locked in, waiting. He let out a quiet laugh. Y'all remember 2004? You could hear a few faint murmurs ripple through the crowd. Oh, they knew what was coming. I do, he said, shaking his head with a smirk. That was the year I lost Best New Artist to Evanescence. Boom. The energy shifted. The room tensed. It wasn't just that 50 Cent lost, it was how he lost after dropping one of the biggest debut albums hip-hop had ever seen. Get Rich or Die Trying didn't just make noise, it changed the entire sound of the culture. That album flipped the game on its head. It was a full-blown movement. But when it came time to recognize that, they handed the award to a rock band. That's when 50 said he knew. It was all rigged from the jump. Eminem stood with his arms crossed, letting 50 take the mic. No interruptions, just respect. Look, 50 said, I ain't got no hate for Evanescence for real. But let's be honest, you ever seen a new artist explode like I did that year? My album went multi-platinum, my singles everywhere, videos on every channel, every hour, but somehow, someway, as they made sure I didn't win. He glanced back at Eminem. Sound familiar? M smirked. Every year. The crowd stayed frozen. Some people nodded slowly. A few artists in the back dropped their heads, staring at the floor. They felt it. And 50 was just getting started. You know what really showed me how fake this whole thing is? He said, leaning closer to the mic. That same album, the one that ran the entire year, lost Best Rap Album to Speakerboxxx, The Love Below. Another pause. A few gasps. Some folks didn't know where to look. Now don't get it twisted, 50 added. I respect Outkast, always have. But come on, y'all really think that album hit harder than mine? Heads shook. Nobody wanted to touch that one. Eminem stepped back in, voice cool but cutting. See, this is what happens when hip-hop takes over. They move the goalposts. When they can't ignore us, they just shift the rules. 50 nodded. Exactly. They'll let us sell out arenas, break every record, own the charts. But when it's time to give real credit, he looked straight into the camera. They turned their backs. He took a breath, tightening his grip on the mic. His voice dropped low like he was letting a secret slip. And the wildest part? It ain't just about us. It's still happening right now. The crowd didn't know what to do. Some folks nodded along. Others sat there frozen, jaws clenched. But one thing was crystal clear. This convo wasn't ending anytime soon. It was only heating up. Eminem adjusted the paper in his hands, flipping it over. The front side, a brutal rundown of the biggest Grammy snubs ever. Legends who got shut out while everyone watched. But the back, that's where it got even heavier. It wasn't about who lost, it was about who kept winning, over and over again. He held that list up for the cameras to catch, letting that silence stretch, letting it sting. And here's the flip side, he said. These are the names of the people who figured out how to play the game. You could feel the room shift. Some people leaned back like they didn't want smoke. Others sat up, eyes locked, ready for whatever came next. Eminem's voice was calm but ice cold. This ain't just about talent, it's about access. It's about who the industry chooses, who they decide gets to win. Then 50 Cent jumped in without missing a beat. And if you don't play by their rules, he paused. You get nothing. Eminem nodded. Nothing. The host, who had already given up trying to guide the moment, suddenly tried to squeeze in, desperate to shift the mood. But the Grammys have honored hip-hop, right? I mean, just look at... No, Eminem cut in fast, shaking his head hard. They haven't. He pointed back at the list. They hand out the same trophies to the same names over and over just so they can say, look, we support hip-hop. 50 Cent cracked a smirk. But what happens when someone shows up who don't fit their image, who don't play nice, who refuses to play along? Eminem didn't even answer with words. He just flipped the sheet back to the front, the snub list. They bury you, he said. The crowd was holding its breath. This wasn't some angry rant anymore. This was a blueprint, a breakdown, a real-time expose of how the system really works. Eminem kept going, voice low and sharp. They let a few of us through, just enough to keep the rest of us quiet. If you don't fit the mold, if you ain't playing the game exactly how they like, 50 Cent let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. Then you're done. That's it. A few people in the crowd turned to each other. Some of the artists sitting there had lived this. You could see it on their faces. Then 50 broke into a sharp laugh. And don't even get me started on who they've handed Grammys to before actual hip-hop legends ever got a look. Eminem cracked a half smile. Oh, we're getting there. Right then, everybody in the industry watching knew this wasn't a speech anymore. This was a reckoning. M let the moment breathe. Just silence, heavy and tense. The audience started squirming, shifting in their chairs, whispering, looking around like, are they really about to say this out loud? Then he went there. And some people, Eminem said slowly, holding the paper back up, figured out how to play the game perfectly. 50 stepped forward with a sly grin. Oh yeah, some folks cracked the code. Now the crowd got real still. Everyone knew where this was headed, and Eminem exhaled hard, head shaking. Look at Jay-Z, gasps. People froze. Look at Beyonce, whispers, eyes widened. This wasn't subtle, it was direct. 50 didn't pull back. Jay, man, you know I'm telling the truth. You learned how to move in this system, and they rewarded you for it. Eminem nodded. And hey, I get it. You did what you had to. But let's not pretend. Do you really think they would have ever let DMX or Nas win back-to-back like that? Never. The pressure in the room hit a whole new level. You could feel it. Then 50 dropped the real bomb. Y'all ever stop and think, how did Blue Ivy get a Grammy before some of the biggest names in hip-hop ever did? Dead silence. Eminem folded the list, placed it gently on the podium, and looked out over the room. That's the game. That's how it's always worked. And everybody in this room knows it. Jay-Z and Beyonce were caught on camera, stunned. They didn't see that coming. 50 Cent looked out at the crowd, nodding slowly. Some of y'all are gonna act like you don't see what's happening, but let's be real, we all know, and after tonight, he paused, locking eyes with the audience. Nobody can pretend anymore. Right then, something shifted in the room. For a split second, the entire music industry froze. The silence wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. The audience, the network, the execs backstage. Nobody had a clue what to do. The weight of what had just gone down hung in the air like a live wire, sparking without mercy. Eminem and 50 Cent hadn't just gone after the Grammys, they had ripped the whole machine apart, piece by piece, live in front of millions. And now, there was no undoing it. Eminem leaned into the podium slightly, finally letting himself exhale. You could tell this was the moment he'd been waiting for. The message was out. The job was done. But before stepping away, he left one last line hanging in the air, sharp, cold, and unforgettable. We don't need your trophies. We made history without you. Then, without another word, he slid the paper aside, letting it fall onto the podium like a contract they refused to sign. 50 Cent stepped up next, letting out a small chuckle. Not a laugh, but more like a, we said what we said kind of grin. He scanned the room one last time, at the audience, at the cameras, and at the people who still couldn't meet his eyes. And Jay, man, I ain't mad at you, he said calm but firm, but I ain't playing this game. Then they turned and walked off stage. Within minutes, the internet exploded. The footage hit every timeline, every feed. Fans were split. Some hailed M and 50 as the realest to ever do it. They said the truth had finally been spoken out loud. No filters, no apologies. Others weren't so sure. Some said they went too far, dragging Jay-Z and Beyonce into it, calling out names like that on live TV. They claimed it crossed the line, that they'd just burned every bridge left in the industry. The Grammys rushed to respond, putting out a statement less than an hour later. They claimed they had always supported hip-hop. But after that night, that statement didn't land the way it used to. Backstage, chaos, phones buzzing nonstop, publicists pacing, executives whispering in corners trying to figure out how bad the damage really was. Meanwhile, artists who had stayed quiet for years started speaking up, some with cryptic tweets, others posting clips from the speech with captions like, "Finally." By sunrise, the internet wasn't just reacting, it was divided. M and 50 shook every trending chart. Some were praising the duo for putting the entire industry on blast. Others were defending the artists named, especially Jay-Z and Beyonce, calling the whole moment disrespectful and too personal. But the conversation wasn't stopping. It was growing. And just like that, the narrative started to shift. People began digging up old footage, clips of Nas getting overlooked, Snoop walking out empty-handed, DMX sitting front row ignored, decades of receipts resurfaced. What once felt like conspiracy suddenly felt like confirmation. But here's the thing. M and 50 didn't say all that to win a popularity contest. They knew the risk. They knew who they were calling out, and still, they did it. Not for clout, not for drama, but for truth. And while the industry scrambled to save face, one question echoed through every corner of social media, every group chat, every green room conversation. What if they were right? And just like that, silence turned into a storm. The Grammys tried to defend themselves, pointing to their past winners like it proved something. But let's be real, like it rang hollow. The truth had already been blasted across every screen. The damage was done. According to reports, Jay-Z and Beyonce looked visibly stunned after hearing the shots fired live on stage. Jay, once a vocal critic of the Grammys, a man who had boycotted them in protest, now found himself in the middle of the mess. Beyonce, ever composed, reportedly stayed quiet, not a single word spoken. But her silence said everything. Still, the real story wasn't about how they reacted. It's about what's coming next. Because one thing is crystal clear. After that moment, the music industry was left shaken. Eminem and 50 Cent didn't just make a scene, they made history. They didn't ask for change, they demanded it. So now that the truth is out there, front and center, the only question left is, will the system finally evolve? Or will they just cook up another slick way to keep the game rigged from the inside? Let us know what you think in the comments. Was it truth or too far? Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more breakdowns just like this. And we'll see you on the next one.